One of the biggest mistake I see when people are editing a photo is they do not select areas. Rather, they just apply every edit globally to all of the photo, which rarely applies. You know, some of the edits you can do like globally, but if you need to do something, for example, in landscape, like enhance the sky, it's a very different edit than you would do, for example, on a flower, which is also a part of the same image. People try to get away from that by using stuff like gradient mask, which is a good start. A gradient mask is, for example, if you want to darken the sky or something, do something with the sky and leave the ground in landscape photos alone. But that has its limitation. Gradient mask, let's say if I want to darken the sky and I put a gradient mask, it gradients everything it touches. It darkens everything it touches. Not only the sky, but also the top of the mountains, the trees, or whatever it's in its way. And if you have a person on your photo, this becomes difficult. You know, gradient filters is not gonna help you with that. It is a complex selection. I would say that editing a photo is not that time consuming, you know, given that you know what you want to do. However, selecting the areas you want to edit, that can be tedious work. It can take a lot of time, and if you want to do it properly, you know, you have to put some work in it. You know, you can see if you do a sloppy work in selection, you start to introduce stuff like halos, and you know, you will see on the photo where you selected the areas, and that's bad. So up until now, the tools you have at your disposal to select areas in Lightroom, they have been somewhat limited, getting better and better. You know, a few versions ago, they introduced luminosity masks, stuff like that. That's a major improvement. But still, I found myself throwing my photos into Photoshop because Photoshop has so much better, more powerful tools to select areas than Lightroom has. But by doing so, by throwing it into Photoshop from Lightroom, I'm losing the raw editing. It becomes destructive. It's now pixel-based, so I lose a lot. I lose a lot of dynamic range. I lose a lot by doing that. But now, with the last update we got from Adobe in Lightroom, this has become so much better. I'm a little late in the game by telling you about this, because I've been editing, but trying this stuff out, you know, and it is truly an amazing tool, and it speeds up my workflow a lot. And now I'm going to show you how fast I can select and edit parts of a photo with the new selection tools in Lightroom. So here we are in Lightroom. I have a few photos here. Let's start with this one here. Okay, first of all, it's a little washed out. This is you know, there are a few global things I could do to enhance the photo before I even start, but the toolbox here is a bit simpler than it was in previous version, and the selection tools is here, this circle here, and it opens up this curtain of options here. And now I'm just going to select sky. This is a relatively easy thing, so it shouldn't have any problems with that. And I just show overlay. If you have a more complex scene, you will see the red mask bleeding into the foreground. It doesn't really do that here, a little bit, but it is trying to compensate it. You know, it's not showing any. You can see it here. It bleeds somewhat into the photo, and that is basically just to soften the divide, so you don't introduce halos. Let me see. So now I just want to start with darkening the sky a little bit. I would maybe like to lose a little bit of the saturation. It's a little bluish. Dehaze up a little bit. Try to get clarity. Trying to get some textures in the sky. Something like that. And this is a beautiful thing. This mask toolbox here, because it shows up as layers. So I can rename it. And you know, before it was just little dots everywhere on the screen, and you have to look for if you wanted to re-edit or change the edit you put onto a selection. You have to find the dot, and now we have these layers thing, and you can rename it. And I'm gonna name this sky. So now I want to select the ground, and I want to create a new mask here. So I wouldn't really try to select subject. Maybe that would work, but I want to just select everything but the sky. So I just select the sky again. And I select invert. So now I have the ground selected, not the sky. Take off, overlay, and let's see if it can just like let me see, take down the exposure a little bit, raise the whites, and put more blacks, something like that. Now it's starting to pop a little again, and maybe give it a little more color, a little more yellow here, something like that. And now I maybe fix a little bit globally, because I want the photo to have like an even contrast. You know, it has to blend well together, so I cannot do too much in certain areas. But now I have this control, and if I need to change something, for example, still I want the sky to be a little less blue, I can just go back in the mask here, select sky, and either change the white balance a little bit and or decrease the saturation so it's more like grayish, maybe a little more punchy, something like that, more whites. And now for a little more complex scene, I have a person, this girl here, and you know, I can see when I pull down the exposure that I am not completely blown out here in the highlights, in the behind the trees. But selecting sky would not be an option here because, well, it's difficult. You know, it selects a little bit here. It doesn't know what to do. It's too complex for that. So we have to do it. Use other tools for it. So in this case, I would probably select the luminosity range, pick here. So that works better, but it does bleed onto the dress because part of the dress has the same luminosity as the sky and the hat. But I don't want it in the dress. It's okay in the hat, I think, because I'm gonna do something, change the color a little bit of the highlights in the sky, and the light falls on the hat, so it might work. But I don't want it on the dress, so I click on the mask. I'm just gonna name it sky here, and I click on the mask and I subtract. I can add or subtract from the mask. I subtract, And I'm just gonna choose brush. And I'm just gonna brush out what I don't want the mask to affect. Like this. At first, I'm gonna leave the hat and see how it goes. I take off overlay because I don't have to. I already selected what I want. Now I wanna see what I'm doing, so I take off the overlay. So first, might a little bit less highlights, not too much, but I want to change the color of it, and it's best to do that like just with changing the white balance. I add a little bit of yellow here. But now I want to edit the whole background, the whole area behind her. I have a mask for sky, but I don't have any mask for background per se, but I do have a mask for subject. So I select subject, and let's see how that goes. Pretty good. The hat is not selected. The girl is selected completely, and you can also see how good of a job it does around the hair. It is pretty amazing. And but I don't want to select the girl now. I wanted to select the background, so I just invert selection like this. Take it off. I want it somewhat softer, so I decrease the clarity a little bit, and maybe a little bit darker to something like that. I kind of like that, you know. Background, if I need to come back to it later. Maybe I darken it a little bit too much. I don't know until I edit the girl, and then I can go back to it if I need to. So now I want to select subject. I want to select the girl, and I just want her to. She's a little dark, so I just want her to pop a little bit more. I increase the white somewhat, maybe a little more exposure. Something like that, not too much. And maybe pull down the black a little bit to get more contrast. So now I see the dress. The light casts like this yellowish cast on the dress. I don't like that. I want the dress to be white. So I select the dress. How do I do that? Color range. New mask and color range. And also it selects like the sky selected some of the dress. So you can expect when you select the dress, it's gonna get some of the sky also in the selection. So what do? I'm gonna subtract from the selection just with a brush, and we just take everything from not the face, not the hat, not the hand, something like that. Should be good now. Okay, overlay, and I just want to have the dress white. Decrease the saturation. Look at that. This is so much better. And maybe a little more. Pop a little bit more by increasing the whites. Like that. This is nice. Now, I would like a little more contrast in the face. How do I do that? Just a regular brush. I pull down the exposure a little bit. And do this on the shadow side, and I do another mask, another brush, and I increase the exposure, and I do it on the bright side like this. Maybe this is a little bit too much, so I can select the dark and I can edit again what I want. Maybe not the exposure, maybe more like the shadow, something like that. And then the bright side, something like that. Not too much, just enough for just to pop it a little bit. It sharpen the division between light and shadow. So another thing where this update in Lightroom shines is in product photography. For example, very often it's like a product on a white background. That's very popular for like websites and stuff like that. It's like a bread and butter work, but it can be tedious to take everything into Photoshop, select the background, making it completely white, because it's very difficult to do when you shoot. But with these updates, I can do this all in Lightroom, and let's take a look. Here we have a product, and obviously I would first pick up these. This is something that you always need to do. The dust and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna bore you with that. That's pretty straightforward. What I wanna do is select the background and make it white. It's gray now. It's kind of white, but it's not white. We don't want that. So here I select, let's just select, I could select the subject. Let's just do that. I could select the color range, and yeah, let's do that. That's fine. And I want it completely white. Look at that. Fairly easy to do. There's no problem areas. But it retains the shadows, because you can see here there are some shadows falling on the from the light. It gives gravity. It's not nice to cut it completely out, put it on a white background, because it's just floating. You need gravity. You need to see that it's sitting on something. So we retain the shadows. We leave the shadows. So I'm just gonna increase the effect. Look at when I increase the reeds of this color range. I can do that here with the refine slider. I'm starting to affect the ice cream, the product, and I don't want that. But to get it completely, I need to do that. So because if I pull this too high, I'm taking too much from the shadow. The shadow here behind is disappearing. So I don't want that. So I want to increase the reeds of the color range, so I just put this slider up here. It does affect the ice cream, and I don't want that. So what do? I subtract the subject from the background. So I just press subtract here, select subject, and it should just select the ice cream, as you can see. And with that, I can continue editing the background, changing the values without it ever affecting the product itself. So now I want to edit the product, then I just do it like create new mask, select subject. That should be fairly easy. Now with that selected, and now I do what I need with that. And with shadow, something like that. So you see the different, and without me talking, this would take me 2 minutes to do, 1 or 2 minutes, which is essential in product photography like that, because you cannot really charge a lot for each photo, but maybe you have 100 products. So to take everything, open it up in Lightroom, do something, throw it into Photoshop, cutting out the background, do everything there, it's time consuming. So this helps a lot. Lastly, I'm gonna take this photo because it's somewhat challenging up until now to select the background I can see it's blown out, but it's not really. If I look at the exposure, drag it down a little bit, I can see, yes, a small area here is blown out, but the rest is fine. So, what do? I select subject, I invert it. So, now we have the background selected, and background. Take off the overlay because I'm done with the selection process. Now I just want to edit, pull down the highlights, pull down the exposure, and now it looks so much better. Now I want to select the kid, and I select the subject, but I might not want to select the balloon. You know, I want to edit the balloon, but separately. So what do? I subtract color range, and I pick the balloon. Then I make something happen, just to see how much I need to refine it. Now the balloon is more or less not affected, so I can edit the boy. A little bit, yes, but a little bit is fine. So I want to increase the contrast a little bit of the boy, like that, like that. Nothing too much, and now I want to edit the balloon. So I create a new mask, color range, select it, and maybe I want a little more. I can see when I increase the refine slider, I increase the amount of red it's taking, it starts to affect the face. How do I deal with that? Yes, I subtract with a brush from the face of the kid, like that. Something like that. All right, let's see what I want to do with the balloon. It could pop a little bit more. So let's do the contrast thing. I can also maybe change the color a little bit. If I want it more pinky or more orange. But I kind of like it red, a little more saturation. Not too much, something like that. So easy and so fast. I would say that this update is one of the best tools I got in my toolbox from Lightroom, from Adobe in Lightroom for a long time. I heard from some photographers that had been reviewing this that some of them feel like it's taking something away from the craft of editing. I don't agree. Not in this case, because I would say completely the other way around. It takes away the tedious task of selecting areas. Time you can now use to improve your editing. Yeah. Because selecting was always the necessary evil of getting a good edit. But in some cases, I do agree with them. For example, in Luminar, I'm just doing this as an example. I'm not saying Luminar is bad and this is good. I'm just making an example. There is this, if I remember correctly, it's called AI landscape or something. This is a slider. This is one slider. You open the photo and you pull a slider and it looks amazing. Okay. The problem with that, you're not editing anything, you're not doing anything. Luminar is. And the biggest problem with that everything starts to look exactly the same and you're losing control over your edits. This, however, you're gaining more control by making the selection process easier, and you can just then focus on your vision, your edits. So this is all I have for now. Try it out. It is fucking beautiful. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.